Awakened, Conscious Conversations podcast to help you grow and discover who you are, to develop a deeper, more complete side of yourself via conscious talks, self-love, meditation, and by interviewing some of the most inspiring guests on the planet. shamanichealings.earth for more information. And this is almost the end of season 11, which has all been about letting go and making space for something new. And I've got an absolute fantastic guest on the show now. This person is a TEDx speaker, the first UK woman to ski to the North Pole, and who's inspired people to explore their potential. Amazing. Sue Stockdale. Sue Stockdale is a polar explorer, executive coach, and author with an in-depth understanding of motivation, high performance, and leadership. Back in 1996, Sue became the first British woman to reach the magnetic North Pole and has undertaken many other expeditions. She has represented Scotland in track and field athletics, author of several books including Risk, Motivating People, and Coping with Change at Work. To quote Sue, in 1996, I became an Antarctic explorer and the first British woman to ski to the magnetic North Pole. Prior to that, I'd never been further than the north of Scotland. Never done any cross-country skiing and never come face to face with a polar bear before. Wow. Without further ado, please welcome Sue Stockdale.
Thanks, Jane. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. And where are you joining us today from, Sue?
I'm in Wiltshire, in a little village where there's probably more horses than there are houses.
Oh, very nice. Wiltshire's lovely, really nice. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today because I've got one inspiration. I've just started your book, and so far I'm hooked. So I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of it. But we're doing a special show today, which is an autumn-inspired show. And it's almost the last episode. But what it is all about letting go. And I thought, who better to talk about letting go of what's stopping us from stepping outside our comfort zone than you, Sue, having been the first British woman to ski to the North Pole. So would you just mind sharing a bit about your backstory and how you came to write your book, etc., and your story, this amazing adventure you went on?
Well, I'll try and keep it as short as possible because it is quite a story. And I think the important point that I would want to make, Jane, is getting to the North Pole was a milestone, if you like, in my journey of life. And I think for anybody, any of our listeners, life is a journey, and sometimes we don't realize the value or the things we're learning along the way that can ultimately help us in things later on. And that's how I got to the North Pole, is I never imagined or even planned to be a polar explorer when I was young. What I did have was an innate curiosity, and I just love following things that I find of interest. And so because I knew I loved the outdoors, I used to follow my interest in doing outdoor activities. That led me on to an expedition with a charity that was known as Rally International, or Operation Rally. Some of the listeners may remember it being called that. With them, I went to Kenya on an expedition for 3 months back in 1988. And that was like a first step to exploring the unknown in a new country. That gave me then confidence to think about bigger adventures. And the next one that then came along was I moved out of my corporate career and worked for 1 year in a war zone.
Wow.
Now that was quite an adventure. And what I learned from that was about risk taking, and that sometimes we do have to take risks, step into the unknown with the innate belief that it will work out. And 1 year on, after I had experienced that and learned about the realities, which are quite different actually from what we see in the media or on television in terms of where I was based in the former Yugoslavia.
Wow.
I learned then that kind of the next risk that comes along, the next opportunity, then I always say to myself, well, what's the worst that can happen? Why not just try and see? And it was an advert to join this expedition going to the magnetic North Pole. And the thing that really caught my attention were two qualifications that the organisers of the expedition were looking for. The first was the ability to work in a team. So I bet you and many other listeners could say yes to that. The second was the ability to raise £15,000.
Wow.
To pay for your place on the expedition. Now, I came from a very modest background. I had absolutely no idea how to raise that sum of money. What I did say to myself was, if it's meant to be, I'll find a way to make it happen. So I had this curiosity to say, I'm not going to be daunted by the magnitude of what perhaps this expedition is all about. I'm going to take the first step and see what happens. And the first step was to send off for the application form. And when the application form came back, it was a brochure, and it was all wonderful photographs of men. And on the front, it said, are you man enough for the ultimate challenge?
Really? No women at all on it? Just all men? Wow. That's a bit limiting, isn't it?
Well, I think these days, certainly, people would comment on that if some brochure appeared that was constructed like that. Back in the mid-1990s, there hadn't been really many women at all as polar explorers. So I can understand. And the organisers themselves said they didn't even really think about that.
Yeah.
But that gave me the motivation to say, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to try and get a place in the team, because why can't I do it? If anybody can do it, then why can't women do it?